Mark.
Welcome
How are
home.
you? It's good to be here. Good to be here. Good to be here. Yeah, we come home and then we go out. Then we come home and then we go out. It's good to be back. How are you feeling this week, sir?
Very good. Thanks, Marcus. Very good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Chapter 12 ahead of us. And this
Yes,
is
yes.
literally the half point of the book.
Yes, 23
Really,
chapters.
really at the center of our story.
And it's at the center of a conversation that's happening in the public discourse right now. I am in education. You are in human development. We're both in human development. And a big conversation has been happening around what is education in the age of AI? And growth starts with uncomfortable truths. Hmm. Can you give us a synopsis of what's happening in this chapter today?
Yes, absolutely. Very happy to. Yeah. So we already got, in chapter 11, we got a sense that there were, a little bit of tension, a little bit of pushback on these salons. And now in chapter 12, we're really getting a full feeling for that. And it takes place in the staff meeting. So Professor
Mm,
Amar is there with his colleagues and the dean, Dean Pilot, and he's really realizing that not everyone is on board with his salon initiative. Not everyone is on board with his unconventional way of being with the students and adapting his teaching methods.
mm,
And so they're sort of requesting him to tune it down, and rather than accept that, he's inviting and suggesting that the dean join one of the salons so that he can experience it himself, and that
mm,
maybe through experiencing it, it might be easier for him to understand the value of this work. And so the dean actually does think it's a good idea, and even proposes to come together with one of their donors. So, one of the people who is contributing financially to the institution, to the university, and who has, I guess, a big interest in continuity, in the tradition, and maintaining the tradition and the reputation of the institution. So, um, is probably even more skeptical of some of these initiatives. And so Dean Pilot says, "Why don't I come with the donor, whose name is
Daniel
um,
Sprong.
Sprong, Mr. Sprong,
Yeah.
and come to this salon?" So that's really the what happens in chapter 12 is the salon is all about AI and how this exponential technology is just surprising everyone in terms of the power and what it can do.
Hmm.
And there's a very open and honest conversation that takes place about how it's impacting being a student and how it's impacting higher education, how it's impacting potentially universities, and how it's sort of redefining the role of what a university is.
Mm,
And at some point, it touches some nerves, and we see Daniel Sprong, the donor, walk out of the salon, um, you know, clearly irritated with what is going on. And
yeah.
so, it kind of, for me, it feels like the story reaches a bit of a climax here, where the new and the old are really clashing, and
Mm,
and there's a sense of what happens now, like where do we go from here. It's
uh,
also the I when I was
mhm,
rereading it before, it also feels like the chapter where Kenna, so the protagonist, really for the first time is stepping fully into his voice and having the courage to speak out from that place of deep authenticity in the presence
mhm,
of Dean, in the presence of the donor, in the presence of Amar. And
mhm.
that really stood out to me, is that he's not holding back and he's showing a lot of courage. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear you say that, and I see it as public resistance, right? There's when we have the inner conflict and we're dealing with something on the inside. Um, Now it's where Kenna has actually said, "What do you believe?" and there's outer resistance given to it, and he stands up to it. Yeah. There was a story in the news this week about, well, there have been many stories in the news, but about this student asking for his refund from a university.
Asking for his, sorry,
Refund.
refund. Mhm.
Because he found out that his professor was using AI, and the professor asked them not to use AI.
Wow. And what
So,
happened?
um, they're still discussing it, so we'll see. We'll see what happened.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. For those watching,
But these are, I mean, these are very good questions, right? And questions that we don't have the answer to because we've never come across this before. And I think that that's the whole point is, this is not incremental innovation, these technologies. This is really
mm,
revolutionary innovation. And whenever you get a revolutionary step change in technology,
hmm
then the current systems can quickly become obsolete and new questions will arise that we don't have policies for, we don't have answers to, and we need to discover it in the moment, right? And I think that in itself requires a certain state of mind, right, to be able
hmm
to engage with bigger questions that we don't have the answers to and figure it out in real time, or at least engage with it openly in real time.
and and what conflict does, and when I say conflict, it's a re-understanding of your beliefs, of your identity. It then you then ask yourself, what is my purpose, or what is my identity? What am I moving towards? What is my motivation? Because now we have to ask universities, what is the purpose of higher education? This is a deeper conversation, which we're going to have today. But like, if there are tasks to be done, what was the task of the university? In the Nordic countries, it is to train them liberal arts to give back to the community. And that's actually something that's seen globally. But when it started to become for profit, now we have to ask ourselves, okay, is university worth it? Or what is the ROI if we're looking at economics? But
Yeah,
how do we manage our resources? Yeah.
yeah,
All right, let's jump into the conversation. Any
yeah.
thoughts before that?
No, I mean, I think it's I actually think there's many things to discuss in this chapter. So let's dive in now.
Mm, yeah. Before we get there, I want to invite everyone to. You can get an advanced copy of the book. We're going to release this. We're going to publish it in September, correct?
Yes, September.
A-
Yeah.
And before then, you can read along with us if you go to being at full potential / coming home, or you can scan the QR code there. It'll take you there, and when you drop in your email, you'll get on the waiting list to follow along.
Yeah, and actually, you'll be sent a digital copy of the book as well. So the current version, right? So it's not the the official launch version yet, but it is the version that we're using as the basis for these podcasts, these discussions. And so you're welcome to sign up, and we'd be happy to share a digital version with you.
Yes, we've actually already edited a first few of the chapters and even a cover. And then we have some Rosie reflections where she has diary entries in between. But you'll get the copy that we have now, the advanced copy. All right.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
book,
we're
yeah.
getting good at this, Marcus. You're getting good at this.
Bit by bit. We
We
all live
slip
in the
in a
biggest
little
room.
marketing here and there.
Ah, you have to tell your story, right? That's what marketing is, letting people know
Absolutely.
your story. Yeah, so I love this quote right here. True progress will always meet resistance. These are some loaded words. And you know me, I love words. Our words build our world. What does this quote mean to you, Mark?
Well, true progress will always meet resistance. Is
And
that they go hand in hand. That if
mhm,
if you really want to change things, you're going to be going up against the status quo. And you're going to always have people who want to hold on to the status quo, and sometimes for very good reason. And so, and maybe the change initiative per se is benefiting from that resistance as well, because in pushback comes learning and feedback and the opportunity to better communicate our ideas, improve them, iterate
Mm.
them. So it's not a bad thing at all. I think resistance is good and it's necessary. But I think it's just fascinating that whenever there is a need to evolve and to change, that there will be forces that want to hold back. And what do you do in that tension? How do you show up in that tension? It's kind of the same thing around AI and how it's putting a lot of things in question. How do you show up in that, right? Are you comfortable in that not knowing and sensing, and using our all of our faculties, all of our capacities to reimagine what can be.
Mhm.
So I think in both cases, it really does require a level of openness to engage and curiosity to engage. Um,
Mhm.
Creativity, I think, is a big part of it too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, creativity is part of your being, right?
Yeah.
It's part of your potential in there. When I saw this at first, um, I always break things down to their ecumenical, like as simple as possible. First principles. Progress, gress means to walk, pro means forward, right? So in order to walk forward, you will always meet resistance. Re is against, sistance means something that stands. You will always meet something that stands. Like life is effortful or growth is effortful. Um, Change is the one thing that's constant. Now, will you be an agent of that change or will you watch that change happen? And there's nothing wrong with watching the change happen. The question is, will you pull back against that change? Will you push it forward? Um, will you make sense of it? When you're watching it, that's when you're making sense of it.
Mm.
And I think the thing that is effortful or painful, let's say, to some people, is they then have to question themselves. Where
Mm.
am in alignment to this change?
Mm.
And that's again inner work that we need to do with our IDGs and
Mm.
for the SDGs on the outside. What am I aligned to when this change happens? Change is going to happen, but what am
Mm.
I aligned to? How does my identity tie into this? And well, that's where you get discernment. Also, discernment is a character strength or character domain. But true progress will always meet change. And you're right. I absolutely agree with you. It is necessary. Resistance is necessary. What were you about to say?
No, I think it's great what you mentioned around identity, right? Because
Hmm.
we don't resist change because the change is, rationally we can say it's not needed or not important. I think often we resist change because our identity is tied to the status quo.
Unless our status quo is the identity.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? If our
Yeah.
identity is tied to the status quo is our identity.
Hmm.
So if we're going to embrace change, by definition, it means that we also need to embrace an evolving identity, or that our identity, our being, and the beliefs that we have, right? And
Hmm.
that also is being invited. We're also being invited to rethink that or to put that into question. And
Hmm.
that's a very, I think, difficult thing to do in many cases, right? Because our
Yeah.
identity is, it's yeah, it's how, and I think
Here-
we've talked about this in previous podcasts. It's how other people see us, and it's who we believe we are. It's who we've come to think of ourselves, and to embrace an evolution of that. I think it's also very courageous work, but I think
Well,
probably
I,
important.
I'll give you a real conundrum, right? Watch this. Um, Earlier this week, I was doing some research on Mao Zedong and the Red Party in China when they had their revolution. And I'm not a historian in that I don't know it so well, but something that stood out to me was students are always protesting. There are protests happening in Poland right now, right? It's students are always coming up with the thoughts and ideas that want to, they're like, this is not right. The funny thing, not funny, but the interesting thing about the protests that happened in China during that time, when he put out his red book, before he put it out, he wanted to invite students to say, hey, how are things going out there? He was inviting them into conversation. And when he heard there was dissent against him being in power or against his character and ideas, then that's when he started to push back.
Hmm.
I know there are moments and times when we are in a state of facilitation or let's say power, when we're a parent, when we're an educator, and we get dissent from the cultural status of a learner or a child, and we have to question our identity. Like, what's our role here? It's in that moment where you're asked, the way you deal with it is actually going to determine how the relationship goes.
Hmm.
Do you understand them? Do you listen to them? Do you act in their well-being? You can have power and act in collective well-being.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and what is power? Is it that you're trying to control them, or are you trying to empower them in
Yeah.
expression, even though you don't agree with them?
Yeah.
It's nuanced. What's up? What are you thinking? I see your brain going like this.
No, I'm just thinking the difference between the dean and the donor,
Okay,
and
talk to me.
yeah, and maybe like I recognize that openness with the dean, right? Even though he's still holding the ship, right, and
Mm,
standing for tradition and status quo. There's a certain level of openness and curiosity that has him go, yeah, let me join one. Let me be open enough to see and to experience it myself.
mhm,
Uh, and I think that's a really interesting character for me, the dean, because he's in between really holding on to the status quo and also feeling within him that there is something here to pay attention to. And of
mhm,
course, right, the donor is more in the extreme or in the camp of um, we need to maintain the way that we've always been doing things, and it's not beneficial for students to start asking these types of questions. um, so
Y-
yeah, I think we have some characters that are really interesting when it comes to how do you deal with change and how do you embrace the resistance and move with it, right, rather than just close the door completely.
you know what it comes down to actually in this chapter? Not what it comes down to, but one of the conflicts that is happening. The donor, it's not about resources. I mean, he has the resources to don, but it's about status and significance of the institute and of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is being challenged, the significance or the status, it's like, what
Mm,
reputation will we have if if it's not done the same way we've been doing it for all these traditional times?
exactly. Yeah.
Dean Pilot, what he values is the well-being of the students, and we see this more in later chapters when his daughter starts to
Yeah.
reveal, like, he really does care about the students,
Yeah.
but he's trying to balance, and actually that's why we called him Pilot. If you remember, Pilot had to make the decision: do I listen to the governing forces, or do I listen to something that I know is right or wrong, or I feel morally drawn to? Oh man, there's just so much here.
Yeah, and I think we can all recognize this, or that's the question that we
Hmm.
have. Like, do you recognize this in your own life, right? Is it
Hmm. Hmm.
do you have this sense of change and being an agent for change, and where do you see resistance to that, and how does it show up, and how do you deal with it, right? Do you push through? Do you listen? Do you use it as an opportunity to reflect, to
Mm.
evolve your thinking, to further build. And I think that these are really very important questions, especially in today's, in the day and age that we are today, right? Where
So, there's something I've been thinking about, and I mean, it's the work that I do. Um, you do the work in human development, and I told you that the problem that I'm out to solve is adolescent anxiety and apathy. Have you ever heard of David Emerald and the empowerment dynamic?
no.
Okay. He wrote a book also called Three Vital Questions. And one of the questions is, and it's talking about anxiety. The idea is that we're surrounded by problems. But when you choose a problem to answer, that's where you have your purpose and you can find peace because it's going to be effortful and you're answering that one thing.
Hmm.
Today's adolescents, youth, they're surrounded by problems and it's amplified by social media. Yeah. They just have so much media and so many channels going through. It's when you know which one you're going to solve and what you're going to work for
Hmm.
that you start to find, like us, like I know what I'm solving, so I'm out doing that. You're working in human development, so you're out doing that. You feel resourced and then you find collaborators. That's why I believe it's projects. Happy people have projects. That's what's going to be that's what's going to bring the full expression of our kids, of our
Yeah.
adolescents.
Hmm.
Experiential learning, them
Hmm.
actually doing, working in alignment with who they are.
Yeah.
That's why there's so much angst right now because kids really don't know what they want to solve because they've not been taught how to critically think or how to solve that with our
Hmm.
traditional models. That's a hypothesis that I'm not testing it. I mean, that's a tradition that's gone on for years, and yeah, PBL is that's why I'm a big proponent of it. What's up? I've been saying a lot. Thank you for coming to my TED talk. Yeah.
No, I'm with you 100%. The sense
Preaching to
of
the choir.
being disempowered,
Mm,
not feeling empowered. And I think that that is a big opportunity for education, universities, schools, is to channel that angst into something meaningful and give that sense of I am a creator, I am empowered to be part of the solution. Because right now it's like there's such a mess everywhere we look that it's easy to feel overwhelmed and disempowered, and there's nothing anyway I can do. So what's the meaning anyway, right? um,
mm,
AI is going to take over all the jobs, so why should I even go to university? Why should I even be studying? That type of logic I think is quite natural when you feel disempowered. But if
mm,
there is a way to channel this and to say, no, AI is, yes, it is here to stay, and it is going to be extremely powerful, but it doesn't mean that there's not a role for us to play. And project-based learning, or project, channeling into projects and utilizing that AI and the power to deliver projects that are meaningful to us, that's one example, right? Where we can start to see, yes, there is something here that I can be a steward of again, and that
mm.
immediately will give a sense of purpose and meaning back into our lives, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that difficult, but it does require a different level of thinking. And if we're still approaching education as, do well, get good grades, you're going to get a good job, you'll have a good life, like that formula is just not, it's not part of the future.
When you say it's not that difficult, what is it?
Well, to to bring back a sense of meaning and purpose for students,
Mm,
for them to
mm-hmm,
feel empowered, right?
mm-hmm,
If a professor, a teacher, a school is holding a different container for them and
mm-hmm,
looking at the future of work through, a much more evolutionary way. And
Hmm.
then it can become, yeah, then I don't think it's that difficult. Like what Amar is doing is not that difficult. And see how quickly it has a positive impact on Kenna and Alex and Rosie and the student body. It's just he's holding a different container, and he's approaching education through a different lens, but does require quite a big shift within the teaching body, right? The people who
Yeah.
are.
I, I, it takes a big shift because we're living in the future, on the frontier of the future right now, right? Like we have to quickly come up with solutions to the, you know what it is? And I'm just thinking about this now. Economics is the management of resources. And one of the resources that had been locked up for a long time was information. But now that there's that quickly dissemination of information, it changes the roles of some people. And people's purposes were attached to their roles. It's like, no, no, no. You're a human being before you're an accountant who pushes around numbers. And now you really have to
You have to.
question, yeah, what is the value of my purpose and being as
Yeah.
opposed to the role that I was doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's man.
Yeah.
Now what are we going to do with the resource of information we have now? Are we going to serve others? Because you can still have the management of resources. I think what the underlying thing is, what is the spirit of it? Are you going to serve others or serve yourself? And you will find no peace if you're not human in connecting with others. Like that's how you find peace, by connecting with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a couple questions here, Marcus.
Oh yeah? Oh, didn't
Yeah.
see it. Okay.
Emmanuel,
Um,
thank you.
Manuel, thank you. What if you're considering problems as a, you know what, Manuel? You are absolutely right. The name of my company is actually Certain Future. And the thing is, the only certainty we'll have is change. Do we see that change as problems or as opportunities? The decision is ours always. And that just comes down to how we were cultured, how we were brought up. Were we seen safe, secure, and soothed? If we can feel that in our inner space, we actually project that into our outer space. Jared Clifton does a lot of work with this with primals we talked about. Well, what are your thoughts on Emmanuel's question, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because we talked about resistance to change, right? And I feel that that resistance is leading to problem solving, right? Because if I'm in a place of resistance, then I see a challenge like AI, and I'm like, okay, let's solve it as a problem.
Hmm.
And maybe that means no essays cannot be written AI, right? We'll have a whole system in place that will cross check and see if it's been written in AI, and if it is, then then it's discarded. So that's like the problem solving, the fixing it mindset. And I think people who are more open to change and realize that we're in a very fast moving, changing times, that they will more likely be looking at things as opportunities and say, okay, this is it. This is happening. It's not going to go away. How do we partner
Hmm.
with it? How do we collaborate with it? How do we turn this into an opportunity that is going to make the whole education process more meaningful for our students? And and I think it really is a kind of an inner process, right? How are we
Hmm.
showing up to these things? And you mentioned safety. Is I think it has a big role to play. I think
Hmm.
resistance comes from maybe more of a fear dynamic, and that we're not necessarily feeling that solid ground beneath us. So we try to resist things, and if we're more secure in who we are, then, and more rooted in our being, then it's easier to welcome things, right? And to let them
I,
come.
that actually goes to this next point brought up. Sharing power without information leads to mistakes and disappointment, which I agree. Now, there's nuance to that you just mentioned, Mark. If I'm starting from a position of power or more power in the dynamic, because it's contextual, but if I start with a place of power and I share it with you, I'm empowering you to express that. And you're right, it can lead to mistakes, it can lead to disappointment, but I'm secure in myself that I'll also be okay.
Mm.
And that's actually what a parenting child relationship is. They cannot learn to trust themselves if you never trust them with power or resources.
Mm.
You give them space to express that power, and you're an exemplar of that power. So you're actually teaching them how to do it. And being a teacher, you understand, yeah, there's a percentage of failage, there's a percentage of mistakes, there's a percentage of, well, there's disappointment, but that's with expectations. Disappointment comes from expectations. But if your only expectation is to learn, you're never disappointed. You see the mistakes,
Yeah,
but you learn from it.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Any
Beautiful. Yeah, I just want to be, I mean, we could go on. There's
We
lots
could.
more to unpack in this particular chapter. At least there's many things, but we are at the half an hour here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I want to thank Emmanuel for your questions. It really does add to the dynamic. So very much appreciate it. And anyone,
And we will be continuing the conversation for the next, I think, 2 more months. Yeah.
yeah,
So
we have another 10 chapters or so, 13 or 11 chapters.
11 chapters. So if you would like to get an advanced copy to follow along, and as we go through the edits as well, this is a conversation for a time that's happening. And I think you and I are bringing a unique aspect of from the inside out, inner development, while meeting our SDGs. Thank you for joining the conversation where you are. And you can continue the conversation with the book here by going at beingatfullpotential.com, coming home, or by scanning the QR code here. Drop your email there and we'll get you a copy. And thank you for being along on the journey. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Be
Till
blessed.
next
Be
week.
blessed, man.